One, getting ready to go off to Wisconsin today. So I'm doing an early for me, morning stream. I'm going to be working on recording my radio show and packing leading up to then. I'll be leaving here about 5, so I don't have much time. It takes me a long time actually to record my radio show and to pack, but I wanted to do a brief update, waiting to see if we build a little bit of an audience. So first, let me do the campaign update. Good morning, Tyler, and then we'll do some brief convention commentary. I had promised you all, because I just started ordering everything I needed for convention, as to where we were at now that we really are at the wire. Not what Well, I mean, wire both in deadline, because when you want to print things, there is a certain lead time. But also, I mean, convention's coming. I mean, it's like winter, right? The Starks are eventually right. So I've now ordered some of the signage I need, and what's remaining will cover the cost of what I need to print for a mailer. So, where my shortfall is, I said I'd be able to give you guys an update on that, is basically I need to raise the cost of mailing the mailer. Like, I have the printing cost, I just need to raise postage and just various handout delegate literature. So realistically, a mailer for convention is one of the highest costs there is. If you all remember my past mailers, they've been useful. Like, they aren't something you look at for 2 seconds and throw in the garbage. As taught by Kara Schultz, I try to provide useful information that people will want to keep, you know? The cost for about a mailer is about $600 to mail out to convention delegates and convention alternates, and then various printing. So in order for me to finalize everything that I need, I probably need to raise between $600 and $900 to finish out my campaign. If I don't, again, no tragedy. The only thing that gets a little iffy is I really don't want to order the printing on the mailer if I'm not going to be able to afford to mail it. That's kind of the touch and go there. So, first money's raised will go to mailing, obviously, and I'll mail as many as I can. Again, it will have useful information on it. So if you can assist me in this last push, and again, once we reach those amounts, that's it. I'll be shutting up and just be talking about, normal life, normal Patreon type stuff, as the show must go on. But here you go. There's my LNC secretary fund. We are in the final, $800 or so. That is pretty exciting. It's expensive to run an LNC campaign. So again, I'm really terrible at fundraising for myself. I'm good at fundraising for the party, but I'm asking you to help if you can. There is still time also to get your good Liberty Unmasked gear at tinyurl.com/pink flame merch. Remember, all proceeds are split with the independent designer. Tyler, there's a reason. There's a reason for that. I'm not really going to disclose why, but we're not going to be slipping them under hotel room doors. This is something that needs to be mailed ahead of time. It either gets done or it doesn't get done. Hector asks, can you shoot a formal fundraising video pitch? You can use it for some of it intro. I'm going to be doing a bunch of videos for my office run. This is my formal video fundraising pitch. This is about as formal as it gets. I'm going to be doing some other just campaign videos, but I'm not going to be mentioning fundraising in them. They're just going to be informational. My fundraising style has always been, if people believe in what I'm doing, they don't need high pressure, they'll just give. And again, it's no tragedy if we don't get to finish the rest. I just would love to do everything that I planned. So we were talking about the Good Liberty Unmasked gear, where proceeds are split with the independent designer. Also, email me if you or your delegation or part of your delegation make sure you have emailed me. If you sent me a direct message or a message on Patreon or a message on Discord, I do try to keep track of all of these various outlets, but really, I'm kind of a boomer like this, that I'm an emailer and my email box is my to-do list. I lose track when there's just too many communications channel. I'm like, oh, did that person get in touch with me on Signal? Was it on Discord? Please, if you want one of the badges, the name badges, and that is not limited to supporters, it will have absolutely nothing about my campaign on it. It is just my gift to the convention with a decent logo on it. Please email me so we can have that ready for you. I've already got supplies ready for that. So now the brief convention commentary. And as I said, this month isn't going to be a light the LNC on fire type month. I'm going to be offering limited commentary unless they do something like really terrible that I need to mention. I'm kind of trying to ignore that they exist, and I'm sure they're returning the favor with me. But there was an email this morning from the Credentials Committee, and I just wanted to do a little bit of commentary on it. It's not critique, it's more just commentary, because I have thoughts and I have feels, and this is a commentary channel. So what the Credentials Committee, they identified a real problem and this is a real problem at nearly any convention. When you have particularly a voice vote, and this solution won't help a voice vote, you have people who yell louder than others. You have people who aren't delegates that are voice voting. It's very hard to know where a voice is coming from. Let me tell you a little known rule of Roberts that no chair obeys. Voice votes are not allowed for 2/3 votes. Those have to be a raise of hands or counted or whatever. You cannot do voice votes for 2/3 votes. Now, if you've been to enough national conventions, you know they do it all the time. And that's not a critique of Nick or anyone else. I've been to a million conventions and they all do it. But this is just a little bit of, now it might just be suggested in Roberts. It might not be so strong as disallowed. But if it's merely a suggestion, it's a very strong suggestion. And it's understood why. It's hard to distinguish, particularly the larger the room. I mean, if you're talking about a little convention of 8 people, like a little meeting, like who cares? But when you're talking about a big convention, you don't do voice votes for 2/3. Now, so raise of hands, right? Well, part of the problem is you always have wise asses who raise both their arms. They're like, and they think they're going to get counted twice. And in a big room, that's kind of easy. So what tends to be best for a 2/3 vote is a standing vote, not a counted one, because that calls for division of the assembly, just a standing vote, because you can't stand twice. Of course, then you risk non-delegate standing, but it's much easier to identify a non-delegate standing than a non-delegate articulating. And ultimately, the bylaws put that responsibility upon your delegation chair. And if your particular state delegation chair is not doing their job, it's up to you in your own state, within your own state, to take care of it. It's not, I mean, obviously, that states are voting correctly is everyone's business, but if everyone polices themselves, other people don't need to mind your business. So this leads to the suggestion of the Credentials Committee. And what they are suggesting isn't unusual. Lots of conventions have, and you may even seen it in your own state convention, voting cards. So when everyone's going to vote, I'm just going to use a yellow Post-it, everyone raise your Post-it. It just makes it visually easier to see a sea of a certain color. And usually it's red and green, so raise your green card or raise your red card. That's not unusual at all. What is a little unusual about what credentialing is suggesting, both in a good and bad way, is they're not suggesting red and green. which is what's typical. They're suggesting issuing to delegates a small, probably about this size, 8.5 by 11 coroplast sign. Each delegate will get assigned this little coroplast sign that will be used like a voting card. And when it comes time to raise their hands, you raise the sign. But it doesn't distinguish between yes and no, but okay, those are two separate votes. But and again, so far so good. I think it's an expense we don't need, but they are fundraising for it independently. It's not going to come out of the party budget. So do I care? Um, if it was coming out of the party budget, maybe I would be a little bit more like, oh my God, no. But if they want to fundraise for something themselves, more power to them. But part of the rationale for this, though, I don't think it's going to do what they accomplish. First, okay, let's just go through it. It says in the past, we've had badge ribbons that say delegate and alternate. Those weren't really for security purposes. Those badges were because we like collecting badges, those ribbons. People like having, look how long my ribbon is. That's what she said type thing. Those were never really used to identify delegates and alternates. It's up to the credentials chair because there's nowhere. Well, maybe there is in our rules that says you have to display whatever credentials are assigned, but we haven't been too strict on that. And the commentary that was made was that they're great, but they're generic and the same each convention. No, they're not really the same each convention. They've been different colors. And they're generic, but there's ways to make them not generic. Pick some unusual color, pick some unusual font. There's lots of ways to make them not generic. And it says not so secure. True, but the idea was never for those to be security. It says, in addition, they're hard to transfer and sometimes get lost. Yeah, it is hard to pull off. And why should somebody have to pull? Because, it could be in the middle of 15 ribbons, point taken. And yes, of course, anything can get lost, but so can a handheld sign. I would argue that a handheld sign is far easier to lose, misplace, or have someone unauthorized pick up than a ribbon. People are not going to be chaining this little core board thing to their sides. They're going to be misplaced all over the place. Let's be real. I would misplace my head if it wasn't attached to my body. And then talking about the ribbon, most importantly, they're impossible to see at any distance, as in when counting standing votes, because they were never used for that purpose. So, that's a comment that true, but they were never intended for that. It says, traditionally, we've operated under basic high trust situations where delegation chairs were presumed to be careful about having delegates and only delegate votes, especially for stand-up votes. That's not a high trust. That's our bylaws give that duty. It's that the bylaws give that duty. It's not, ooh, wink, wink, we trust you. It's a bylaws duty. And the email says that's great until it isn't. Well, then amend the bylaws, because the fact is that duty is part of the bylaws. It said, I feel that it's likely that at least in voice votes and possibly also in standing votes, that alternates have randomly participated in being counted, likely in error, because in their enthusiasm, they stood up for a vote. Yeah, that probably has happened. And it's the job of the delegation chair to make sure that doesn't happen. Will issuing a voting card help that? And a delegate transfer, if they're going to be off the floor, they have to hand off their voting card to an alternate. Sure, I suppose it could, but I don't think anything's better than the delegation chair just making sure the proper people are voting. Because here's the thing. What if the delegate can't find their card, or the delegate left their card at the bar and someone unauthorized picked it up? To me, this is a solution looking for a problem that's probably going to cause more problems than it solves, or it's going to cause different problems. It probably will solve the identified problems here and create a whole slew of additional problems. So I guess on balance, everyone has to decide, is it worth it? It's not unusual to have voting cards. It's not unusual at all. But I don't think we should pretend like this is going to solve the identified problem without creating different problems, and because it will. And so it says we've kicked around a few ideas, and then they talk about the coroplast signs. And one of the arguments for the signs is that it's difficult to forge, basically. For the first day, yeah. If you think for the second day they're difficult to forge, I don't think you understand technology. I'm not trying to instruct people on how to forge, but I'm not a genius. And if I thought of this, the people who want to cheat will think of this. You just take a picture of it. There you've got the graphic. You find a 24-hour sign printer. They're not hard to find. I don't know about in Reno, but I know here in Denver, I might have to pay a lot of money, but I could get a coroplast sign printed in 24 hours. And if I have the graphic, by just taking a scan of it with my phone, on second day, next thing you know, not saying it would happen. And let me tell you why it probably wouldn't. It isn't because they're hard to forge. It's because most libertarians are poor, and we're a little lazy sometimes. So that sounds like a lot of work and a lot of money. But let's not pretend they're difficult to forge. The one, yeah, they're not. So is this really solving the problem? The best argument for it is that it's a great convention souvenir. You get to bring home a card, but not if you're an alternate, because there's only one. So people might be fighting over these cards. But they get to have friends sign the back. The back's going to be blank. So yeah, it could be a really great convention souvenir. All I ask is, if you do this, just realize it's not going to be this panacea. It is a great souvenir. I applaud the creativity. Here's my ask, because in the back of my mind, I think there's something else motivating this. I can't prove it, but I think the convention committee has heard that there's a grassroots rebellion against their hateful logo. And I think these Cora board signs are going to have the hateful logo on it to force it on everybody. So I think that's going to raise a lot of resentment. To be honest with you, I'm not going to want to be holding a sign with that hateful logo on it. Of course, if I'm required to, I will. But forcing people to like something or to do something that they don't particularly care for is not really the answer. So here's my ask. If you're going to do these signs, again, great souvenir, please don't put that hateful logo on it. Maybe just put the slogan, Liberty Unmasked. Maybe consider doing green and red. I don't know. Just saying, this was just commentary. I don't come out in favor or not in favor. I'm just trying to be realistic that this is going to it will solve some problems, and it's going to cause additional problems that we've never dealt with before because this is brand new. And I'm always just like, if your solution isn't bulletproof, like if your solution isn't going to cause an equal number of problems than it solves, then maybe stick with the devil, rather than wonder about what the unintended consequences of this are going to be. I don't know. I'm just throwing things out there. I haven't come down on anything here. To me, this is just very interesting to talk about. I love souvenirs. So, and if they're fundraising for it themselves, wonderful. But I would love to hear your thoughts on trying to be very perfectly clear here. I'm not being critical. I'm just trying to analyze it to determine if this is the best solution. Security of votes and things like that is always an issue. It comes up every year with convention, um, uh, platform deletion tokens, on how do you make those secure. I had an idea to do that. I'm not going to say what it is because it would make my idea less secure. I don't know if the convention committee is going with my idea because, apparently I am she whose name cannot be spoken. And apparently my ideas are no good, even when they steal them, like already against the next mandate. But I don't know. I'd like you all to put your thinking caps on with this and see what you think. I'll take the souvenir as long as it doesn't have that hateful logo on it. Because honest with you, if it's got that hateful logo on it, I'm going to scan it for LPD and throw it in the trash after the convention's over. Because I don't want that logo. I think that was a fraud upon the members. And apparently the hundreds of people that are writing me that want a different name badge feel the same. So I hope the convention committee starts to listen to the membership, and at least on this convention souvenir, just put unmasked Liberty Unmasked. No Phantom of the Opera, please. Cameron, mail-in ballot. We're not doing mail-in ballots. As far as I know, electronic voting has died in committee, as it should. So, yeah, over this next month, I am going to be shooting campaign videos. I've got a lot to do with things that don't necessarily are directly to do with my campaign. The historical committee is going to have a table. I've got a lot of work to do with that. But my big need over the next 2 weeks is to raise the postage amount for the mailer. So if you can help with that, let me put this back up on the screen. And again, buying gear, that money does go to my campaign. So that helps too, and you get something out of it. So if you haven't gotten your good Liberty Unmasked gear, what a perfect time. I have the figures here. So from merchandise sales, there was $320 worth of profit that was split equally with the designer. So the designer was real happy to get out of the blue about $160 that he didn't expect. That's always nice, right? You can always use extra 160 bucks here or there. All right. I have a feeling if we made stickers and put them over the shitty logo, it would invalidate the card. I hope my gut is wrong and that this isn't a way to force the logo on us. I have no way to prove that, so I'm going to think the best. There. So again, my secretary campaign. Also, at Karen, how's Venmo go? At Karen-Harlow, so it wouldn't let me put Ann in, is a way that you can help me on Venmo. I just did a big order for signs myself today. All right, everyone. I'm going to be going to record my radio show for this weekend. You probably will not hear from me more this weekend. I am going to, even though I am on a social media fast, I did say I would still post certain official things. I'm going to post this last fundraising need that I have on social media and just leave it at that. And what happens, happens, right? All right, everyone. I hope you have an awesome day.